Good afternoon, Sooner Nation, or right there in the Central Time Zone. Good morning, Sooner Nation, here at the Voice of College Football on a Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. Central Time, each and every Wednesday for now 45 consecutive weeks. Welcome to the Voice of College Football OU. So glad you could join us. We're talking Sooner football with all of you. So, with one big minus for this week's show, you see the absence of Jason Ray. We're going to miss Jason today. Unfortunately, has to take care of some family business, but Jason's not going to be able to join us today. So with the one big minus, I thought, you know what? I got to be able to fill the void. We've got to be able to add a big plus for everyone today. So we are firing up the phone lines. We will take your calls. So Sooner fans, line up. 860-499-3332. 860-499-3332. We have opened up the phone lines, which we typically don't do for any of our team-specific shows. If you're not aware, we also have a Miami show each week, West Virginia, Florida State, Ohio State, Michigan, and who did I miss? Nebraska and Iowa. And but I figure, hey, this is a perfect opportunity for you guys to be able to call and give your take on anything concerning Oklahoma, whether that be recruiting, the 22 team, the transfer portal, the 22 schedule, also looking back throughout history, because there's a few things that caught my attention in scanning the headlines and searching Oklahoma football today that I'd like to pass along. They include that we mentioned a few weeks ago that there was a tally made of the all-time AP rankings, which go all the way back to 1936, and that Oklahoma, I believe, was number one all-time in the AP rankings. So whatever formula they put together, which I believe consists of how many weeks did you rank at number one, how many weeks did you rank in the top 10, and how many weeks did you rank total, and put that together, and Oklahoma has the most impressive AP run in the history of the poll, dating back to 1936. So we talked about that a few weeks ago. It was announced today, according to The Athletic, that the coaches poll, which dates back to 1950, has a tie at the top between Oklahoma and Ohio State, with Alabama number 3, Michigan 4, and Notre Dame 5. No big surprise to anyone. Again, Ohio State and Oklahoma tied all time in the coaches poll going back to 1950. Bama 3, Michigan 4, Notre Dame 5. Also, I found it interesting that The Athletic came out with an article that re-ranked the 2018 recruiting class. So that class has pretty much been dismissed and has made its way through college football. So in 2018, you would have played 2018, 19, 20, and 21. Of course, you could stick around for COVID years. We've got college football players now sticking around for 6th and even a couple times 7th seasons. Imagine that. But if we're just talking about those players that stuck around for 4 years, and that would basically take up most of the high rate, high caliber, contributing, starting impact players. And they gave a ranking system, and they looked back at the 2018 class. And for Oklahoma, they had the 9th ranked class of 2018 at the time, number 9 at the time. And The Athletic, in terms of their point system, now re-ranks that class at number 34 in the country. So we may look at that as well. And again, the phone lines are open at 860-499-3332. We would love to get your take on Oklahoma football. Checking out the comments that are coming in. Big Mac Mullet Sports. What's up, Sooner Nation? Hope you all are having a great day. Stay blessed and healthy. Boomer. Any status on the Overton brothers? Boomer. So today would not be the great day to ask me any specific recruiting questions, personnel questions. I watch the games, but I am not an Oklahoma insider guy. We can talk program, we can talk all time, we can talk history, we can talk Venables, we can talk in terms of those terms, and then also the phone lines are open, and I would love to hear from all of you. So this is a unique opportunity where we've hooked up the phone lines, and we would love to hear from you and your take on Oklahoma football, whatever you'd like to hit on today. Mark, how's it going, buddy? Hope you're doing good. And again, if you missed us off the top, Jason could not join us today. So I figured let's counter the big negative that Jason, we're going to miss Jason today. We're going to counter that with a big positive. Would love to hear from you. And again, the phone lines, let me pull up the banner here. Open at 860-499-3332. So anything on your mind concerning Oklahoma football, the Big 12, the nation, but specifically Oklahoma, of course, 860-499-3332. Roberto, Boomer, Sooner, all day, every day, baby. Roberto, good to see you here. Michael's here. Is there a time limit on when an offer to a potential player can accept in case the college wants to offer someone else? Is there a time limit on when an offer to a potential player can accept in case the college wants to offer someone else? That is a tremendous question. So if I'm understanding the question, so if we're talking about this particular recruiting cycle in 2023, and then the player makes an offer, or the school makes an offer to the player, and let's say the player commits at some point. So let's say the offer comes out mid-February right now for the 2023 class. And let's say 2 months from now, said player accepts. So we know that the acceptance, the commitment by the player is not binding. It's just kind of a pledge to say, I've made up my mind, this is my decision. But as we all know, nothing counts until December 15th or whatever the date is going to be this year, December 15th, 2021. So in that interim, the offers can be pulled. So keep in mind that the offers can be pulled. I don't know if there's a time limit on when an offer to a potential player can be. When you say accept, you mean ACC, EPT, accept. They can wait all the way until National Signing Day to accept. And beyond that. So, for example, I believe we've got until April 1st for this last recruiting cycle of 22, and the second National Signing Day of the first February Wednesday. We've got another couple months until April. So we still have a couple players in the top 300 in the nation who have not signed. Your fave Shed? Your fave Shed. 9-3 is a solid first year for Brent next year. Really? 9-3. So there's not a marquee non-conference game. Not that Oklahoma is going to be, or Nebraska is going to be a pushover on the road, especially since we saw what we saw last year in Norman, and considering that Oklahoma is going to run into old buddy Casey Thompson, most likely he's going to win the Nebraska starting quarterback spot. So that's not necessarily a give me on the non-conference schedule, but it's a game that Oklahoma should win. So 9-3, I'm a bit, I consider that to be a bit of a low bar for Oklahoma. That wouldn't be a disastrous season, but considering there are no real heavyweights in the Big 12, I think 9-3 would be a bit disappointing, I'm guessing, to everybody that's listening right now. 9-3 would not necessarily be alarming, or let's put Brent Venables on the hot seat type of season. But considering who are the better teams in the Big 12 next year, most likely they're going to be the same teams as we saw last year. But Oklahoma defensively should not be as good. Baylor defensively should not be as good. We did have our Texas guy on last week. Keep that in mind. And that was a good show with Matthew Miller came on to talk some Texas football with us. I thought that might stir some things up a little bit. Yeah, not keeping up with Oklahoma recruiting. I'm not a recruiting guy. That's why we bring on tons of recruiting people on the Voice of College Football. I keep up with it as much as I need to, but I cannot keep up with 1,000 players across the nation. Mark, what are you going to do with the $185 million you won on Monday? If I won $185 million on Monday, believe it or not, I would probably still be sitting here. I had to think about that for a second. For a split second, I thought about it and thought, of course, I'm not going to be sitting here if I had $185 million in the bank or on the way now. But you know what? I still got to work. I'm only going to take a vacation for so long. If you threw $100 million at me, I'm only going to take a couple months off, and then I'm going to be back at the grind to a certain extent. The grind would be much easier. Andrew says, not happy with 9-3 at all. There's just not that kind of weight in the conference for Oklahoma to have to settle for 9-3. And once again, keep in mind, I have fired up the phone lines today, 860-499-3332. We would love to hear from you. Chad likes 11-1. Yeah, Roberto, we've got like 25-year-olds this season going to be running all over the place. Michael asks, do we trust the overall talent ratings? I believe OU ranks in top 10 on other sites, 247 Sports. The last total team talent rankings that I saw for the 2021 season, Oklahoma was 6. And the reason I believe that those can be trusted is Alabama's 1, Georgia's 2, Ohio State's 3, Clemson's 4, LSU's 5, Oklahoma's 6. Look at the history of the college football playoff in 8 years. Outside of those 6 teams, who has shown up, who has won anything? Nobody. Basically nobody. I don't think there's a win outside of those 6 teams. Oregon in 2014. So the first year of the playoff, Oregon won a game. That's it. Alabama 1, Georgia 2, Ohio State 3, Clemson 4, LSU 5, and Oklahoma 6 in the playoff. Of course, LSU was the one-hit wonder, but they did win it all and won a national championship at 15-0, but that was their one appearance. Of course, Oklahoma's been the antithesis of LSU when it comes to elite programs. They're the consistent winner that's made it through the Big 12 and made it to the playoffs 4 times. 2015, 17, 18, 19, okay, 4 times, and of course 4 losses. So LSU and Oklahoma, while Bama and Clemson have been the most successful, and then Ohio State, and then Georgia, but those 6, they're the 6 most talented rosters in the country, according to 247 Sports rankings, and they are the 6 programs that have been in the playoffs the most and won the most in the playoffs. I think after those 6, and then maybe if you tack on Notre Dame, Michigan, Penn State, Texas A&M, you tack on about another 5 to 8 schools that have been fairly successful over the last 4 or 5 years, that it really drops off in its accuracy, because then it becomes more about development. So keep this in mind. In the 2022 recruiting class, Georgia was number 1. No, Texas A&M was number 1. Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State were right there in the top 4. Their 4 classes were much higher than everyone else. But Texas A&M, the number 1 class, regardless of what you think of how it was acquired, the number 1 class in history in terms of a point total, the difference, the gap between Texas A&M at 1 and Kentucky at 13, still a good class, 13, the best class in Kentucky history. That gap between 1 and 13 in terms of player ratings is the same gap as Kentucky at 13 and Fresno State at 75. That tells you pretty much everything you need to know about recruiting rankings. Ohio State's at 4, Michigan's at 8 in this past cycle, and that 4 to 8 doesn't seem like a big deal. Again, you're number 4 and you're number 8. That doesn't seem like a big gap. It's the same gap as between 8 and 24. So I'm a big believer in the talent rankings in mass, in total, not individually. Any player can be a bust. Any player can buck the system and become a superstar as a 2-star, 3-star. But in mass, they're accurate. All right. Man, I thought everyone would jump on this. First time ever, 45 shows. Who knows when we're going to do this again? 860-499-3332. This either tells me that you guys are taken a little off guard by the call-in opportunity, or most of you watch our call-in shows on the main channel anyway, so you know that you can call me anytime. But this is, of course, strictly Oklahoma football talk. Michael, this is an interesting question here. So we're going to have to open this up to the chat because I'm not thinking of anyone in particular. There might be one. So Michael's asking, do we have many examples of teams switching to a new defensive scheme and performing at a high level on defense in the following year? I do think the one example that comes to mind first and foremost would be Brian Kelly revamping his offense and defense, new defensive coordinator in 2016, 2017 after a horrible 2016, and they went from 4-8 to 11-2. And then also Mike McDonald stepping in for Don Brown at Michigan this past season. Michigan had been a really good defense under Don Brown, but not performing well against the elite teams. And then they had a bad 2020 season, but that was a 6-game season. And then Mike McDonald stepped in with a new scheme and turned it around for Michigan in 2021. Those are the two that come to mind. And I don't remember what the defensive schemes were in terms of a change, but look at Brent Venables leaving Oklahoma, going to Clemson a decade ago and cleaning up that defense, and there being a significant improvement immediately. Michael says, do you see a significant difference between a 4-star and a 5-star player? Here are some differences. Of course, as we know, there are tons of 4-star players that turn out to be amazing, all-time greats. There are 5-star players that are busts. Just to give a bit of a framework around the question would be that there are just about 35 5-stars each year. I believe that one of the rating systems between ESPN Rivals and 247 Sports, one of them just has a set limit on 5 stars. I don't know which one it is, but I think one of them does, to say, okay, there's always going to be 35 5-stars. So whoever's 35 is still a 5-star. And then for whatever reason, they have some type of reason why they determined 35. The other ones basically just rate the players and say, this point total is a 5-star, and this point total, that's the dividing line between a 4 and a 5-star. And there could be 12 5-stars, there could be 27 5-stars, there could be 82 5 stars, but even in under their ratings, it typically comes out to about 35. Okay. I have seen studies and research done of NFL rosters, and there are more 4-star NFL players than 5-star, but we have to put that into context. That's because there's only roughly 35 5-stars each season in college football. Each class coming into college football, about 35, and there's about 300 to 400 4-stars. So if you check out Rivals releases their 250, top 250, 247 Sports, it's the top 300, and ESPN's the top 300. They are still ranking 4 stars at the 300 player. So there's a number of 4 stars that aren't on the top 300 list. So it goes another 100 players or so. It's about 400 players compared to only 35. So only about 10% of the players are 5 stars compared to 4 stars. So you're going to have 10 times more, 10 or 12 times more opportunity to have 4-star players on NFL rosters. But based on percentage, there is an obvious, wouldn't be a bell curve, hockey stick curve. There's an obvious one based on the star system on NFL rosters. If you're a 2-star, you have a minute chance of reaching the NFL. 3-star, you have some slice of a chance. 4-star, it goes up significantly. And 5-star, it shoots through the roof. So there are less 5 stars, but by percentage, there are more, many more 5 stars reach the NFL than 4 stars by percentage of 5 stars. So hopefully that answers your question. Ty, Venables teams will not be softest in the playoffs like that biatch out west. You don't think so? I don't think so either. I just think that he just is that type of football coach that he believes in hard-nosed, tough football teams, that those are the teams that are going to, football is still a physical game. The rules changes, the style of play have changed it to a certain extent and made it more about space and speed, but it's still at its core a physical game. And if you don't have a physical team, you are not going to win playoff games against the kind of teams that you're going to face in the playoffs. You're going to play Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and those teams you cannot win without being physical. And I'm going to enjoy watching Oklahoma football this year to see a difference in the physicality, and that starts with a mentality to play tough and hard-nosed football, not to shy away from tackles, but to impose your will. Braden is asking, Mark, are you an Oklahoma fan or a USC fan? Those are my only 2 choices. Really? That's it. That's all I got? So we've seen the under expectation of 9-3 from one of our folks in the chat, but now we see Ty says we have a chance to win it all next year with Brent as our coach. Michael, that would be an interesting review to make, to look at all the defenses in the country and see how experienced they were. I know in particular at Ohio State, they had a young defense and they had a bad defense. Even though it was talented, they were inexperienced and bad. Seems like the good defenses last year were made up of veteran players. How long do we think it will take for OU to get the new scheme? That is a great point, because for a defensive coordinator, much like in a lot of industries, there's a balancing act between, okay, we want to be able to build a defense and put a defense on the field that is going to confuse the offense. But we don't want it to confuse our own players. We want our players to know the scheme, know their role, know their responsibilities, and be able to fly to the football, not to be overthinking, because overthinking players are not fast football players. So a defensive coordinator's got to be able to gauge how much can these guys handle. And when they have experience, they should be able to know that, have a pretty general concept of what players can handle, what they can enter into their minds and be able to execute. I will remind everyone, we have never encountered this before. No calls here at 860-499-3332. And once again, there's the line. And I know this is a new facet to the Oklahoma show because Jason's not here this week. But you can give me a call at 860-499-3332. Would love to get your take on Oklahoma football. And as we stated off the top of the show, in researching online to see what the headlines look like today, the coaches poll all time, which dates back to 1950, has been released and added up, and Oklahoma is number one, tied with Ohio State for the top spot all time in the coaches poll going back to 1950. OU and Ohio State at 1, Bama at 3, Michigan 4, Notre Dame 5. And also, we could dive into the names from the 2018 class that was originally ranked number 9 in the country. And by the athletics ranking system, and I'll pull this up in just a second, they have re-ranked that class for number 34. That is quite a drop. Chad Brewster says, I think the reason Brent's defenses do well is because the kids genuinely want to run through a wall for him. Some coaches have that quality. We talked about this last week in regards to Oklahoma's transition and adjustment to SEC play. Andrew says Venables is a better fit than Riley for the SEC. Riley gets great offensive recruits because of Baker and Kyler in his offense, but the defense under Grinch was average. And Alex Grinch certainly needs to be given some level of credit for upgrading the defense somewhat significantly. And again, that's the call-in line at 860-499-3332. So checking on this article on The Athletic, so there it is right there. The Athletic re-ranks the 2018 recruiting class. They have dropped OU from 9 to 34. So the players in that particular class. So first and foremost, this is how they came up with this calculation. They gave 5 points to a player who is either an All-American, an award winner, top 50 NFL draft pick. They gave 4 points to a multi-year starter or all-conference player. They gave 3 points to a one-year starter or key reserve. They gave 2 points to a career backup, and they gave 0 points to somebody who just left the program or didn't really step on the field. So again, 5 points if you're an award winner, an All-American, or a top 50 NFL draft pick. Number 4, those 4 points given to an individual player as a multi-year starter or all-conference honors. And number 3, 3 points given to one-year starters or key reserves, 2 points given to a career backup, and no points if you didn't contribute at all. And based on that, dropping OU's class from 9 to 34, that class included defensive starters like Brian Asamoah, Nick Benito, Pat Fields, Ronnie Perkins, Oklahoma's 2018 class has been ravaged by attrition, and the highest rated player in that OU class, offensive tackle Bray Walker, has been primarily a reserve and special teams player. So Bray Walker was the highest ranked 2018 player, and he has not turned out. The following players transferred: cornerback Brendan Radley Hiles to Washington. Defensive tackle Michael Thompson went to Missouri Southern State. TJ Pledger, of course, went to Utah. D-end Ron Tatum to Northeastern Oklahoma A&M. Wide receiver Jaqualin Crawford to Arkansas. Quarterback Tanner Mordecai, of course, to SMU. Wide receiver Jalen Robinson to UCF. Cornerback Miguel Edwards went to Independence Community College. And quarterback Starland Baldwin to Lane College. So they've had about 10 players leave the program, and offensive tackle Tremonda Moore was dismissed from the team. From these defensive starters in this class, that looks pretty strong to me. Ronnie Perkins, Nick Benito, Pat Fields, Brian Asamoah. From the defensive side of the ball, the 2018 class looks decent to me. I'm not seeing on the offensive side. In some ways, it may still be too early to fully judge Oklahoma's 2018 class, and that's partially because of the COVID season in 2020 and players sticking around. For example, defensive tackle Jalen Redmond, linebacker Deshaun White, and tight end Braden Willis were members of the 18 class, and all three figure to be important starting roles for OU in 2022. Interesting. Andrew says, Pat Fields, kind of glad he went to Stanford. Great kid, but got beat plenty. Muhammad, Lincoln Riley is going to find out that most of the call players are going to Oregon or somewhere. Would that be Cali players are going to Oregon or somewhere else? We shall see. Pete Carroll certainly owned that state and all the coaches at USC before him. Roberto Lincoln, scared of the SEC. Riley and Alex Grinch were soft. Glad Brent Venables and Todd Bates are coaching the defense. Now, I am, I got to say, taken back by the response by Oklahoma fans who seem to be in panic for the most part for a week or so after Lincoln Riley announced he was leaving, or just flat out left. The announcement came later. But Lincoln Riley left. It seemed as though the sky was falling. And I'm glad to see that Oklahoma fans have recovered and are backing Brent Venables. I think it's a good hire. I think it's a solid hire. And when I say solid, that sometimes gets confused with solid, meaning it's just going to be okay. No, I think it's solid in a good way. Solid, stability, integrity, character, toughness, discipline. You can't win championships in football by just getting the fastest players that can throw the ball and catch the ball the best and scheme the best. That's not enough. That gets you in a good place, but that doesn't complete the deal by just getting, okay, quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and we'll scheme them up. We can really out scheme the other team because I'm so smart. Okay, that's a good start. That's really good. And in the Big 12, that has been highly successful. That has been 11-1 successful, but that's also translated to losing by 5 touchdowns against LSU and being down 28-0 to Alabama in the first half of a playoff game. And last season against the Oklahoma State and Baylor defenses, not being able to do much against them, especially, of course, Baylor. All right. One more time on our call-in show here, 860-499-3332. I'm not used to this because we do call-in shows, if you're not familiar, over on the main channel 2 or 3 times a week. We do call-in shows, and the lines are jammed, packed. I thought that you guys would be excited to give your take on Oklahoma football. So we're going to do a going once, going twice, going 3 times, because those were my talking points for the day, were the 2018 class being re-ranked from 9 to 34 by The Athletic, and the all-time #1 status tied with Ohio State in the coaches poll. We do. There we go. I have begged and pleaded, and here we go with a call-in at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? Michael, how you doing today?
Doing well. How are you?
I am doing just fine. What's on your mind?
I was just curious what you thought. I think a lot of us were excited to see Perrion Winfrey do so well in the Senior Bowl, and as well as he performed this whole last season, it seemed like he took it to another level for that Senior Bowl. And yeah, I'm just kind of curious what you thought about that. I couldn't tell how much of that might have come down to motivation, or whether it's just maybe the previous scheme and the constant rotations and twists and stunts and things like that maybe didn't suit him. Yeah, I'm just curious to see what your thoughts on that might be.
So I think a few things could tie into that. So number one would be the motivation. So now that we know the full Lincoln Riley story of how long those talks were going on, we know that there is speculation. Nothing can be really proven. It's not measurable, but that his heart wasn't there. He wasn't fully invested. Obviously, the team was still really good, still talented, still able to win games, but didn't have that purpose, that drive, and maybe that was evident in the locker room. And we've talked about it on the show going back to the second or third game of last season, when those indications started to be there that there wasn't buy-in across the board, and there were some alarming indications at practice and lack of effort there. Now, the one thing I will say about the Senior Bowl experience is that sometimes a player will show up at the Senior Bowl and we think of it as just a game, but prior, as you well know, that week they receive instruction from NFL coaches. And sometimes a player can really take to that, can really learn a lot, new fundamentals, new techniques, and really pick up some tips that they can apply immediately to their game. And maybe that's what happened. Hello, sir? You still there?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Sorry about that. Yeah, that sounds, yeah. And I think he mentioned on a previous interview that sometimes he felt like he didn't want to go out. I know Grinch was big on rotating players and keeping them fresh. But it seems like Perrion was more eager to stay out there and keep playing. So I'm not sure how much that an effect that has on most players, but or how common that thought was. But I know some players really don't like getting taken out for obvious reasons, and it seems like he might have been one of those.
Well, at his position, it's pretty common these days. That's been the the trend in college football now for a decade or so, to really stack up the defensive linemen and have a rotation. Depends on the player, depends on the position.
Right. Well, thank you. Appreciate you taking my call.
Thank you so much for calling in. Have a good day.
You too.
All right, Voice of College Football here. We appreciate all of you joining us today. We're here every Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. Central Time. And typically here with Jason Ray from Last Word on College Football, our Oklahoma guy. Also had a really good conversation with Parker Thune from 247 Sports. Hopefully you'll check out those videos. They're being posted. And Parker and I are going to get together again on Thursday this week. So on Thursday of this week, Parker Thune and myself, 247 Sports, we're going to start to break down position by position, offense and defense, to get you set for the spring. So again, Parker Thune, my goodness, that's the first time I've had him on the show, and he is just a wealth of knowledge and insight into Oklahoma football. So we posted that, posted the entire conversation on the main channel, but there are specific posts here, and I think all of them have been released here on the OU channel. Yeah, so we've got a number of videos that have already been released. We still have some others coming out here soon. No need for panic. The grind of the SEC. Is Lincoln Riley still the victim? The villain, I'm sorry. And a 2023 recruiting update. So again, Parker Thune, 247 Sports, joins us on Thursday. We've already cut up a tremendous conversation with him from last week, and it's available in many segments on the Oklahoma channel. And again, the complete conversation, about 30, 35, 40 minutes of Oklahoma talk on the main channel. And we get together on Thursday as well. Aaron says, I think USC goes maybe 7-6, just like Texas will have top recruits, but can't get it done. Yeah, there's going to be a some growing pains for Lincoln Riley. They had one of the 2 worst defenses in the Pac-12, and that's saying something last year. You just don't come in and snap your fingers and everything's fine. Our USC guy, Matt Zemek from Trojans Wire, we posted some videos with him recently, and he thinks 10-2 is going to just happen. I don't necessarily see it that way. I know the conference is weak. Chad, yeah, Parker was great. Mark, also get on Aquino, however that's pronounced, on some, whatever that means, some more. Yeah, he's been on once or twice. Has been a little bit difficult for me to track down. Good guy. We've enjoyed the conversations with him, but people are busy. So I do my best to try to get as many. We don't want just one voice, one person on any particular team. We would like to get perspectives from a number of people. So some people, this is what typically happens with suggestions for guests. Some people say yes, some people say no. Michael says, it seems like Levy is looking for taller wide receivers. Is this a common trend for other teams? I think this has been a trend for quite some time now. Maybe 7, 8, 10 years, something in that range. Looking for that advantage over defensive backs, tall wide receivers. And that's one aspect of the wide receiver core that doesn't get talked about a bunch, is that you don't necessarily just go for the same type of wide receiver and say, this guy's a freak and we want a bunch of freaks like him. But you've got your slot guys, you've got your outside guys, you've got guys that run routes well, you've got your over the top, take the top off the defense guys, you've got your high point the football guys that will also box guys out. You've got your converted tight end type players that are mismatches for linebackers and some safeties. And then, of course, you've got your slot guys. So, think Julian Edelman, Hunter Renfrow, Adam Humphries, then think Anquan Bolden, David Boston, physical dudes, and then think your Hollywood Brown types, get it downfield, take the top off the defense, and then think of your number one dudes that kind of encapsulate all of that to a certain extent. AJ Green, Chad Johnson, Antonio Brown, when he decides to stay in the field and keep his shirt on, those kind of guys. All right. So we appreciate you being here. You know that we are here every Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. Central, typically with Jason Ray from Last Word on College Football. I thought I would counter Jason's absence by opening up the phone lines for you, but we just got the one call. So we are going to say good day for another week. We'll be back here next Wednesday, 11:30 a.m. Central, right here at the Voice of College Football. Next up on your Voice of College Football schedule, and I know you keep these at home because it's a packed day. After our show right here, Ohio State live at 1:30, Michigan live at 5, Florida State at 6, Miami at 7. See you in about 15 minutes on the Ohio State channel. Thanks, Ron.